Because I find that it's becoming a cop-out for people to say, hey, don't support this person. This person is getting money from these people. But in reality, if we were to put you in that room, you probably don't have the comfortability to really sit across the table from them and get them to sway in any direction. Trump spoke a little bit more, had a little bit more bravado and confidence of just speaking to the outcome more than the steps. And so I think Kamala, by far, when you're talking about the qualifications to be a certain role, she was probably going to do the best regarding the execution and the strategy to do those things. But Trump is just a better communicator of getting people to feel confident that this thing is actually going to be done.
But isn't that just the bring them?
Here we go.
Money, making crap for money.
How you feeling about the results of this election?
And again, my first interview since this election.
Yes.
The person I voted for, she lost.
Okay.
But I knew she was going to lose.
No. How? You did? Did you know that too?
I didn't know anything. I'm just
How'd
here
you know?
vibing with life the best way I can. So,
Right.
Well, I know it was a few statements made. I was listening to The Breakfast Club. I forget what guest was on, but she felt like Kamala didn't really talk about her policies. She didn't talk about what she was going to do. Instead, she had a concert where Megan Thee Stallion performed and Beyonce performed, and she thought that was gonna kind of like coddle to the black community. I had an issue because I felt like she didn't say what her policies were either. I kept asking and I kept looking and I couldn't find them. However, Heather here has done campaign stuff and she told me that it takes like 2 years for a presidential candidate to even like start to form their policies, and Kamala was just thrown in there in a matter of a few months.
Sure.
So that's when I gave grace. But I still had hope that she was gonna win just because of like, I mean, Taylor Swift co-signed her. Like, you know what I mean? Like Taylor Swift, Meryl Streep, like all of these big artists who have a big influence co-signed her. And it seemed like to me, and maybe it's because my timeline is mostly Democratic, I don't know. Sure. But it seemed like there was a lot of people who were downing Trump or saying they didn't want dictator controlling the government and things like that. Yeah. So to me, it kind of threw me off. Yeah,
so hold on, before you jump in, I was thinking, I wanted to ask you that question, so I'm glad you brought it back up when you were talking about running the campaign, because I have generously made up this 2-year rule because I've seen presidential candidates typically they start showing up and start doing little by little.
You go to Iowa first. Then,
it's about 2-ish years. But how long typically do campaigns typically take?
Well, it depends, because sometimes there might be a strength in you having a what I consider a shorter runway. And honestly, and without knowing for sure, just speculation, there might have been strategy as to why Kamala did have a shorter runway. Because if a lot of people's criticism about her is like you said, not really mentioning too much policy, and when you really maybe have her on camera, maybe she doesn't look as just smooth or natural compared to like Trump. Trump did Joe Rogan for like 3 hours, and they was just in there vibing like how we are. Yeah. Can you really say you have seen Kamala really do that, right? And so what I'm saying is like,
maybe on Club Shay Shay,
to an extent, but it's like, but you got to even think the audience that are probably watching that are already going to vote for her.
But was that already scripted? Number one, was that already scripted? Of the questions, like, no, you can only ask these. I feel like Trump just will be like, whatever. So let's talk about whatever.
If your strength is already not really connecting with the people on that level, maybe you don't want them to be able to see you for a whole year and a half plus, compared to like, because at the end of the day, she still was breaking records regarding fundraising. Yeah. She still had what I consider to be a pretty strong ground game, and ground games aren't necessarily always about the candidate. Here we actually have the Young Democrats or the Virginia Democrats, and each state and each city has that component. So no matter who's going to be that person on the ballot, there's already essentially this machine that's ready to operate, right? Yeah. So even though she got in late, the machine was been ready. The machine's been ready. Already's going to have the ground support. Already's going to have the fundraiser. Already's going to have venues that they were going to host these meet and greets or these, concerts in this case or whatever the case may be. So for her, I think ultimately the reason why I felt as if she was going to lose was because as time went on, you started to realize that Trump is probably going to go down in history as the best presidential candidate regarding a silent voter population. There's not a lot of people, not a lot of past, you got to think, even when we were like supporting, let's say, President Obama back in like 2008 or 12, whatever the case may be, people would tell you, I'm voting for Barack Obama proudly.
Yeah.
But we actually have a lot of people, black, white, and it's not even a race thing, who obviously supported Donald Trump. But if you were at work and you talked politics to them, they probably weren't coming out and say, oh, yeah, I'm voting for
And
Trump.
I said that
but
all
they
the time. I was
were
like, you never
sitting
know
there.
what people gonna do when they get in the booth.
You said that.
You
And
never
yes,
know. You
but
can
I-
say
Yeah,
whatever
that is
you
true.
want.
But I think Trump has the biggest population of those people who would feel comfortable with, like, they'll talk politics with you, and maybe even, I don't say they're lying, but like maybe let you do a little bit more of the talking. You're like, oh yeah, I
Right.
see. But like, nah, I'm voting for Trump.
But can
Right.
we also talk about, because you were saying like you saw on social media like a lot of people, hey, I'm supporting Kamala.
Yeah.
This is what's happening. But those people didn't show up to the polls. They
Here in
didn't show up.
Richmond, I think we were at about 60.
I mean, Virginia was blue.
Well, but
Virginia
that doesn't.
was blue.
Virginia was blue.
It was blue, but
I mean, here in Richmond, we were still less than 70%. I don't want to give you the wrong number. I think it was before maybe the provisional ballots aspect. It was about 62% of people, the registered voters who actually came out and voted.
Only 60.
Now, only 62. And so it doesn't really necessarily impact what the presidential race was, because it was predominantly blue, right? But it definitely impacted, let's say, the mayor's race. Because in this particular, a lot of those maybe registered voters who didn't come out to vote were more than likely from parts of neighborhoods that might have voted for, in this case, Michelle Mosby, who ended up getting second place. So it's kind of like, voter turnout matters. It does. No matter who you're voting for, I think voter turnout matters. And I think that a lot of people, like myself, no matter who you voted for, I look at that total number. I think it was DC, I forget, somewhere who did pretty decent. They were maybe around like 72%. I don't know where your comfortable average is about like where you should aim to be. But in my mind, I would like to think that each place should be like 70% that are participating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so if you're not, and you're like, okay, that has a little bit more to do as well with the ground game beyond who's the candidate on the ballots. There are entities that work or knocking doors and saying, hey, do you have a plan to vote? They're not, do you have a plan to vote? And are you going to vote for this person? It's like, are you going to vote early? Are you going to vote by mail? Are you going to go
what
on the day
state
of?
shocked me though?
Who?
Georgia.
Well, you got to think.
They shocked.
He ran, I mean, I think he won every battleground state. If I'm not mistaken.
yes.
That is impressive. I'm like,
But
the
Atlanta
worst
is
person,
it's
I'm the worst person to kind of
impressive.
talk about some of these things too,
Yeah.
because I can speak about it in a way that it makes it seem very just like
No,
not
I-
emotional. in
No,
a way.
I like it.
So it's like to do that, that's like very much impressive to run the
Agreed.
battleground
Okay.
states in which
Agreed.
you were
Yeah,
hearing
okay.
press say like, oh, he might only get 2, possibly he might not even get 1. For him to get every single one of those,
Yeah.
and you have to see people reporting and saying like, up, he just won Pennsylvania, up,
Oh
he just
my
won
gosh.
Georgia,
Yeah.
up. Like that is a testament. There are people who, and we'll go back to President Obama. There are people who were on President Obama's staff that back in 2008 and 2012 and all that, who now have jobs still to this day. And the reason why I mention that is because the people who are a part of this Trump orbit today, it's not always just about Trump. It's like these people who are helped get a monumental win like that, they're going to have jobs for years and years and years to come. So it's a testament to us really underestimating the ground game that I think the Republican Party had across the country, because maybe we're siloed in a way. Like you said, I think I really only saw people really talk about the Democratic candidate.
Yeah.
In my algorithm. My algorithm, if, you know what I'm
Agree.
saying? If I, knew nothing about politics, I literally saw all Kamala, right?
Yeah.
all I
And
saw.
we're thinking, oh, she's going to win by a landslide. But in reality, that's not
reality,
going to be the case.
There's another side to this.
And so I think that when, what you have here regarding like podcasting, podcasting also is having a remarkably monumental impact.
Joe,
on this.
I think Joe Rogan swung that race. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, he had 27 million people watching that race. That should have told us right then and there. And Club Shay Shay, he had Kamala on, and I thought when I saw it, he had a few million people watching as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But I don't know, it solidified it for me. Like, I'm like, dang. And then he shouted out Joe Rogan in his
there you
acceptance
go.
before he got accepted,
Sure.
before it was announced.
That's
I think
exciting.
Fox News had announced it. Of course they did. But he was like, yep, shout out to Joe Rogan. I think it swung it. And then Joe Rogan had on Elon Musk after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always say, too, if Trump gets elected, Elon Musk is up there as well.
Benefiting.
He's benefiting.
He had
And
on JD Vance as well. Rogan. He had on
JD, I didn't see that one, but I saw
that's
he
actually
was.
the one I watched in full. I watched maybe half of Trump's.
I tried to watch
But-
Trump's, but I thought they were going to talk about politics, and they didn't
Y'all
for
are
a
so
while.
amazing.
So I couldn't get into it because I wanted to know what his policies were. Well, I also said to you, because as a person who's not super involved in politics, like I can talk a little bit about it, but I'm not as aware as you guys are. To me, it made sense that after Trump won, I was like, well, he got 27 million views on the thing, and he's supporting Elon, who is a silent player in this game. I mean, Elon's controlling everything right now, like with the SpaceX, with the X healthcare stuff that he has going on. So I'm like,
he's in the war situation. I think
he's in the war.
Ukraine is using. I think it's called Starlink.
Yep, the internet connectivity thing.
He's in quite a bit. Yeah.
And also the Trump I didn't hear a ton of his policies, but he did talk about immigration. And a lot of people are on the side of, build the wall, get these
There's a level of bravado that comes with Trump, man. And I think that really resonates with men. Okay. For me, and even this is a complicated topic, for me, again, serving Black women is something I do. Yeah. Actually, my first, shout out to Danielle.
Shout out Danielle.
Danielle was a mentee of mine.
Danielle, is she a lawyer?
No. Okay. She's in politics.
I got you. Okay.
So she, back to Virginia 21, she, eventually, when I graduated, eventually took my place as the president of that organization. But she worked closely with Kamala while Kamala was still vice president. Okay. And I just thought that was just so cool because I'm like, man, there's people like me who can actually get that close to these people that are making this type of impact. Yeah. And so for me, working with or supporting Black women is just something I naturally, do. Yeah. Right.
Can you? Sorry. Please. I thought you were gonna. No, you're fine.
It's but I know that there are men who, like, even if I don't agree with him, just the way he talks, like, hey, we're gonna. By the time I get in there, I don't even have to get in there yet. I'm gonna end that war in Russia and Ukraine. Like, that's for people. So when you talk about policy. And I've been all around that district, the district that we just won. By a good amount, we won that district.
2000, right?
That was a person in second place, much more against the person that was in third place. But you have to understand that it's not like they're asking, tell me your detailed policy point on X. It's, what are you going to do about this? So it's not like, hey, this is going to be my 5-step plan to be able to impact this state. It's like, I know there was one mayoral candidate who didn't, obviously, one of the ones who did not win, but one of his big things was like, hey, I'm going to bring a grocery store to the South Side. They didn't ask, like, okay, who are you going to work with? What's going to be maybe the private equity firm that maybe you can do? Or do you already have a list of it? It was like, I'm going to bring a grocery store to them. And I'm like, oh, I need to get a grocery. I've been waiting for that. And so it's like, Trump spoke a little bit more, had a little bit more of bravado and confidence of just speaking to the outcome more than the steps. And so I think you can be I think Kamala, by far, when you're talking about the qualifications to be a certain role, she was probably going to do the best regarding the execution and the strategy to do those things. But Trump is just a better communicator of getting people to feel confident that this thing is actually going to be done.
But isn't that just bring that back around to what you do on a full-time basis? That's the power of marketing. Is literally talking about the outcome of what you're going to get at the final result. Truly. Yeah.
Or in this case, a lot of the cases were vouching for the work that actually was done that people were trying to say that hadn't been done. So sometimes when you're serving an incumbent, which neither of them were, so we're also not super used to having a race where there's not an incumbent.
That is true.
Right?
Yep.
So when you're servicing an incumbent, you're really in a lot of the mode on defense of like somebody saying she's not doing this, and you have to be able to say, no, she has done this, that, and a third. But since there were a lot of holes in the work that she was doing, let's say to the border, even though she wasn't president, you were able to still kind of blame her for certain things. So that kind of hurt her in the way where she was having to take the blame for certain things, but didn't really have a great message of the things that I felt as if this administration has done well. Yeah. So to that, like you said, marketing communication does matter, but sometimes you can have the right idea, but still just not the level of the right execution. So back to that, like Meg Thee Stallion thing. One, I love Meg Thee Stallion.
Same.
But like, yeah,
like talk like, about politics. Tough. Like I don't need you to.
It's tough, and it's kind of kind of in a way cringy. Like if you watch it, and you'd be like, if you really were there, and you know that, like, and again, I was able to speak dozens and dozens, if not in the hundreds of people who are dealing with some type of struggle. If that's a financial struggle, if that's a health struggle, if that's a gun safety, is that neighborhood safety, if that's being able to get to point A to point B without hitting potholes. There are so many people that are looking for some type of answer for their real life issue, right? Real life problem.
Yeah.
And so if you go to, let's say, a rally and you're now watching Meg Thee Stallion do a 6-step, dance routine, and it's like, dog, okay.
That's not the way. But
it's tough.
I mean, so much. Meg Thee Stallion is educated, very much a college educated woman. She could have brought her out and had a conversation, and I mean, we could have had panels,
or she could have brought Cardi B out. Cardi B talk
any
politics
of that.
all
We
the
could have
time.
had an entire panel or to connect to the people outside of, oh, let's just do a concert. Right. No, let's talk about the real issues and how we can make it better. That
do y'all think that would have worked though?
Like, I'm not saying I don't know what would have worked for her.
That. I mean, she did her there was a lot of things that I feel as if that Trump did that really solidified him to be able to have the path that he had.
Interesting.
And then a lot of the cities that we just deem to be like, when you think about like Atlanta or DC or whatever things will just naturally go blue. But areas that we don't necessarily think about maybe in our day to day because we don't live there, like there are a lot of people who are. I went to Massanutten probably about 2 months ago, which is like going kind of towards like UVA. If I told you that if you lived in Massanutten or just in that general area and you never left, you would think Trump's about to win by 1 billion. So there's certain parts of the country where you can go and it's like nothing but Trump.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nothing but that. Like, it's like Trump or nothing type vibes.
And I think a lot of her campaign got overshadowed in the beginning when they were talking about her being a prosecutor in San Francisco and was putting a lot of black men in jail for possession of like marijuana and things like that. That is literally all I heard for when she first started running, like black men for Trump because Kamala put us in jail. And I went back to think like, is there even black people in San Francisco? Because I was Googling pictures.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, what are black? So I was like, where are the black people that have been marginalized by this information is what I was trying to find out. But I feel like it completely overtook her campaign for quite a while. Yeah. And then if you're on the shade room and stuff like that, like you would think it would be mostly Democratic because there's a lot of black people there and a lot of black people vote Democratic. However, in the comments, it was a lot of like comments about blacks for Trump and things like that. Which amazed me.
Yeah.
There was a lot. I mean,
but if you're a prosecutor, that's what you're supposed to do.
That is what you're supposed to do. But they have. Really, I mean, that's not a fact.
It's not. I would have at this point. It's kind of focus on what's ahead of us now at this point.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
like, even that. Back to the messaging and marketing and why the work that I do is so important because like do your best to get ahead of that, but also do your best to also understand that there are some people, no matter if you give them the truth right in their face 2 inches from their nose,
that's true,
that there's nothing you can
it's
do.
nothing you can say.
I don't know if y'all are on Reddit. Have y'all?
Yeah, I mean,
from time to time,
I'm not on it, but through the campaign I had to be a little bit.
Oh, okay.
When I say that if there's a community that's made up their mind about something, they've made up. There's nothing you can say.
You was in there arguing with them.
Oh no.
Oh, okay.
You just find out. You just find out.
No, not to.
So that was my thing with Kamala, and you basically brought it up was you ran before, so you know what everyone's issues were with your campaign with. The reason that you didn't get selected as a Democratic nominee the last time. You had all that prepared in the bag. So you should have immediately came out, her team should have prepped her and made it to where we're going to combat these issues immediately. You don't feel like it? I feel like they should have.
100%. But it's like if it probably would have been any other Republican than Donald Trump, she probably still would have won.
Okay.
It's like when you have such a candidate that is so polarizing and powerful in that way, it's just tough. It's tough to get in front of messaging because you're going against somebody who is willing and able to go off message. Yeah. So it's like you also don't want to be too scripted because that'll be the difference. It's not the difference in morals because obviously if a majority of people, forget electoral college, if the majority of the actual popular vote voted for this person who has the felonies, has done all these different things, you would think that the news is trying to tell us should be a part of his moral fabric as why you should not vote for him. Obviously, they're still voting for him. So now it's not really a conversation about morals, right? So it's his ability to connect with people then at that point. And so if he is, and I again, voted for Kamala. But in a world where if this was a movie, which it's not, and their lives are on the line, but if this was a book, speaking about books, he is a hilarious figure.
He is hilarious.
He is hilarious.
He is.
It's
and not even trying,
unbelievable,
and
but
not even
yeah.
attempt, like, this is him not in no way trying to be funny, but he's just naturally hilarious.
Yeah, yep.
And so you have to think, and so when we're
He
talking
made great
about
TV.
you got to even think there's influencers on TikTok. I don't even call them influencers. Let's just say popular TikTok channels, right? Of people who voted for Kamala, but were making satire comedy of Trump, but in no way probably are realizing that they're actually inspiring people to vote for this man. Think of that. Like, I there's one
That's
that come to my mind,
hilarious
like,
because
truly.
I actually did do one for
You
my
did?
budgeting page.
You don't
So
understand.
as you
That's
say that,
free
I'm like,
promo.
that's promo.
Ooh, you're
He
a part of the
mentioned it.
problem.
He mentioned it earlier where because he was talking about, because apparently the Democratic Party is like $20 million in debt, or her campaign was $20 million in debt after they lost. And Trump, like, again, back to hilarious messaging, came out and was like, that's terrible. He was like, we should, as Republican Party, we should just pay their bill for it. Just pretty much, trying to like, we'll take care of it.
We'll take care
and because
of it.
we didn't even have, and he was talking about the things that she was having to pay for, which were like these interviews and stuff like that or whatever. But he was like, fortunately, we did make a lot of money, but we didn't even have to spend a lot of it because we had earned media. And so he mentioned that.
Yeah.
So in this case, like, there were people who were making these satire comedies of Trump, which in no way know that it's really inspiring people to see him more in a humanistic way, compared to the person who, again, is saying, as recent as today, is going to be willing to use the military and National Guard to deport people, right? Because now, as we're getting to phase into his actual administration, you're going to start losing people's attention spans to an extent, who are now going to be able to determine if they're going to vote for him or not, and are going to now go back into whatever it is that they do in their day-to-day and not be as focused on the election. So now he can say, like, oh yeah, I'm going to, whatever I need to do to have the National Guard and the military come out and be able to help deport these people, which includes his person that he's going to have leading these services, where he was recently asked, what if you have somebody that's attempting to be deported and they're with their families, and you don't, aren't you going to feel bad that they're going to disconnect them from their families? This man was like, well, take the families too. Like, it very naturally, it was like, oh, we'll deport them too. They can be together.
That makes me want to cry.
And so
that
it's
makes me
like,
sad.
so you got to think. So when these realities are taking place, there still is this community of people who see him as this satirical character,
and
where he's
with
still
the
funny.
Tariffs as well, because a lot of people aren't getting holiday bonuses now, and a lot of people are getting laid off because these tariffs are real.
I mean, there's a lot of people that already are looking for new jobs. And again, now, because I have friends that are actually in the space who, there's thousands of jobs. There's jobs that you don't even imagine that are determined on who wins that race, who wins the president. Thousands and thousands of people who are already now on Indeed themselves or having to take interviews because they know when Trump gets in, whoever he puts at this certain agency is going to clean ship or whatever. So, and I have friends who are going through that currently. So her losing wasn't like, oh my gosh, I wanted my girl, and it was like, oh, I'm out of a job. I haven't been fired yet, but I am undoubtedly and inevitably out of a job within 2-3 months.
This all just really takes me back to the first time and working in federal government. That's why I'm seemingly over here sad, because it took me to a place where I was so empowered to work for the government and to enjoy and want to give back to the same way the military is able to give back to their country, give back to our country. And I immediately just didn't want to do any of it anymore and be connected with it, and left the government. Like, and it just takes me back there.
A lot of the best people do. And they'll go into the private sector, where you'll get paid more. You probably have a little bit less stress of you might needing to get a new job in a few years, depending on who's in office. And so that's why we end up losing. The turnover there is very high. And that's why even though, to me, I spiritually knew that Trump was going to win. So to answer your question, how did I know? That God gave me a spiritual peace about it. So before I saw the result, I already had the peace of the result. That's why I then recircumvented that to know, okay, he doesn't normally give peace for something that doesn't end up happening. So when I said that, him winning, I can see a reality where I will still be fine and push forward with that. I was like, he wouldn't just give me that if he wasn't actually going to grant that person the position. So once he was in, I was like, oh, okay. But then I still had to be empathetic in a way where people who I am close with, people who are remarkably smart, even older than me, that are like doctors, whatever the case is, and they're like distraught, like, oh my God, this is going to be the worst thing ever, and this is the worst thing in the world. And it's like, I had to be empathetic to know that, a lot of people are kind of, in a way, grieving. A lot of people have a lot of symptoms in this case from this loss as like grieving something. So even though me personally, I have zero semblance of that, I still am very much empathetic to the people that are going through this.
Yeah.
Because you got to think, some people our age, right?
Yeah.
Who went to college, have now the experience of working in this space. And let's say right after college, they went straight into this. You got to think the encompassment of their entire work has been battling this one man. Like, that's kind of like people like NBA players in the LeBron era. Like, their whole era of being in basketball is surrounded by this man, right? Who has won all these championships. He's the person you hear about every night. Similar to them, where Trump has been the one. So you've had 3 elections. He's won 2 out of 3. A lot of people that are like devastated because their whole life has been to like help put pieces on the ground to ensure that she would win and he wouldn't. For me personally, I didn't, thank goodness, I didn't have to taste what it would feel like for my city council candidate to lose. Yeah. But I did know, I'm like, man, if I just put 9 months into that and we saw the results that we lost, I would have been devastated.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine. Yeah. Yeah,
okay, but you familiar with Susie Wiles, right? That was Trump's campaign manager.
Yes.
Who is now his chief of staff.
Correct. Right.
Do you see yourself in, well, because I didn't know how much a campaign manager meant to a campaign until I saw Susie Wiles become his chief of staff.
Yeah. Well, he also had a co-campaign manager who actually has 804 ties. I forget his name.
Okay.
But another gentleman as well who's actually relatively, I don't want to say from here, but has
so he had a couple. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for an operation like that, normally you will.
Okay.
So do I see myself being a...
Can you see yourself, like, is that the goal, to eventually be a campaign manager for a presidential candidate?
To advise, to be a senior advisor for multiple, either, again, candidate. What I find is candidates, i.e. then the eventual person who's in office, loyal, and Trump just takes it to a completely different realm, but loyalty plays such a big thing. Because you got to think, these are people, like, you end up knowing so much about this person.
All of their personal details. Anything that they...
Good, bad.
So it's very intimate in that way.
Okay.
And so, like, if you have somebody who's been with you on the ground and helped you get in that position, it's just a natural, it's a humanistic thing. It's not even as much mental as it is what I consider to just be instinctual of like, okay, now that we won, I have to have you here still. So, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you would like to think that my help would come from the campaign side and then carry over into the office, like how it will similarly be with Councilwoman Robertson.
Right.
We just went 8-9 months through the campaign, and now we're having discussions as how I will be of service, how my marketing firm will be of service for the next 4 years, right? And we're actually really taking our time with that because essentially we want to be able to do it in a way that whatever is the agreed upon kind of relationship there, we don't have to really touch it again. We can just let that be the case for the next 4 years. Wow. So for me, to be able to do that we're doing city council now. I was very close on I don't want to say very, but close with Michelle Mosby and her race for mayor. Yeah. I was actually in her TV commercial. I love Michelle Mosby. It was one of those people who whatever she needs. However I can help. Yeah. So even though she ended up losing, I also had a relationship with our mayor-elect, Danny Avula. And so Danny's someone who I've reached out since he's won. Said congratulations. Yeah. Looking forward to working with you. And he shared that level of mutuality as well. But for me, knowing that'll be mayors, governors.
Stoney's spot, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, not yet. January 1st, January 2nd.
January. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then my other question, I said I had a lot, but I only had 2. The money. How much money do you need to run these campaigns, and where are you getting the money from?
So how much does a candidate need to run a campaign?
Yeah. How much does a candidate need? I'm talking about for the commercials.
Oh, yeah. Give me a race, though. So, for trying to run for what?
The one you just did.
For city council.
Yeah.
If I had to put a number to it, and somebody were like, hey, I'm a qualified candidate. I'm trying to run. These are my accomplishments. How much do you think I need to win? My number, if you could raise probably a good, let's say 70,000, we probably can get you there.
70K for real?
Yeah. And so there were
okay.
Yeah. Well, but then there's some who won it with less, depending on it depends what race you're running, who you're running against, because it becomes like a horse race in that way, right? Yeah. So if somebody's raising 50, you kind of really would like to say you raised 55. If somebody's raising 80, you probably want to try to do 95. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So if there's if you're going against people who are also have a level of vitality to fundraise themselves, as long as they're not astronomically beating you out. So if I said, if you could get 70K, we probably could still strategize you to beat out somebody who maybe made let's say 90K. Because one, I have learned that just because you have the money doesn't mean you're necessarily utilizing it properly. However, and that goes back to the encompassment of the show, right?
Yeah.
That you can definitely misspend. Yep. And then there's a timing aspect too. So for me, thankfully, I guess there's no races coming up super soon, so maybe nobody will use this. I definitely would intend to use radio again, but I undoubtedly would also only really do it in certain pockets leading up. So if we would have ran those same radio ads back in June, they would have gone on deaf ears. Nobody's like driving around your car, you're trying to go, pick up your kids or whatever. I don't care who you're trying to tell me who I'm supposed to vote for 5 months from now.
Right.
You're missing it. Right. But we did a huge push the last really less than a week. And on these radio shows that were in certain pockets of time that people were most likely to be listening to the radio, our ad spend was decently small, but it was highly impactful. And then again, so that's just for city council. When you get into the mayor's race, that's when you're really talking TV commercials, and you're then in a different conversation. But then it's also, again, back to the timing. So for us, we began communicating with people probably back in, dare I say, let's say March, April. Right?
Yeah.
And we actually had about over 2,000 new registered voters this time around compared to 2020. So there were a lot of people that, even though she was a long time incumbent, there were a lot of people who were brand new to the city that, no matter how great of work she's done, they just don't know who she is. Yeah. So you want to be able to communicate with them in a more, maybe a different way than maybe you would for communities of people who have known her since who knows how long. Yeah. Right. So yeah, I would say to get a winning campaign, probably here in this city, I would say probably a good 70K is what I would probably aim for us as a low.
To connect it back to our listeners, because obviously we're talking about politics and races and winning races, but the same thing with entrepreneurship, getting out, meeting people. It's not just a quick connection. These things take time to build those connections. You just said this past spring you guys were out there. You guys have to take that time to really build those relationships. And then also notice when you were talking about the ads on radio and everything, that last push, like if you're running an event, you might want to do your ad push that last few weeks right before an event or something, so that you're really pushing to the community, hey, come out. It's important when you're looking at those timings.
And our touch points were immaculate. I mean, from email to website, social, radio, print. So that's your mailers, billboards, signs, meet and greets, so many different touch points. Yeah. And so for us, it was how many times can we touch? But how many times can we do it in a way that it's also not overbearing, right? So it's like people don't want to, and there's certain things that you're able to do that you won't maybe knock the same door 10 times. There's systems that are able to show you that, like, hey, on, July 17th, we knocked this door and this person already said yes. Let's not bother them again on August the 7th trying to say, hey, you know what you're going to vote for? It's like, I've already told you yes. What do you want from me? So it's being strategic. Oh, yeah. Oh my God. Well, and look, and I think it's because I moved from LA to Virginia within the last year and some change. I was exempt from, I didn't get any text.
I was getting texts like 5 times a day.
I didn't get nothing.
Wow. I got a text after she lost, and it was like, are you voting for Kamala?
No. I feel like I got a text from Obama. I feel like Obama? Yes, I know for sure.
I've heard that she got she got one sent from their dog. It was in the dog, her whatever. I guess they have a dog. The dog's voice. Like I'm like,
election was 11-4, right?
5.
It was 5.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but no, I got one on the 6th as well. Yeah, no, it was
well because for them it's also like, and I don't know if they did, but like they still probably needed to fundraise even after. Yeah, like, as wild as that sounds, but like you were in the red after. So
well, the reason why I had asked you that question about like how much does it cost to run is because I saw that Kamala had raised $1 million from the AKAs, and I was like, oh, she got it. Mm-hmm. But not knowing that it takes millions of dollars to run a presidential race.
I mean, I think Mayor Stoney who's running for lieutenant governor, and all this stuff is public, so I'm not breaking it.
Right.
But he's
breaking news to me.
Right.
Shout out to
already raised over $1 million for this lieutenant governor's race. Like, it's not cheap to run these races. And you got to also think that sometimes, depending on the race, you might have like an overtime portion of it. So like for the mayor, if no one were to have gotten 5 districts out of the 9, they would have had to go to a runoff of the 2 people who got the most of the popular vote. So there was a potential reality where, let's say Michelle Mosby or Daniel Bula did not get 5, that those 2 would have been the ones to have a runoff that would have been that race would have been like December, maybe 17th or something. I'm probably off with that date, but mid-ish December. So if you spent all your money already and now you're maybe having to start from scratch and do fundraising again, that would be critical compared to like somebody who probably already had enough money to win, but it's like, don't stop, keep raising, because you might have to go to overtime, and you still want to have that level of leverage to say, I'm still the heavy hit maker when it comes to fundraising, even in the overtime period as well. So there's a level of strategy where, and a lot of people, there's also certain things where certain money that you raise in one race, and there's certain details that come with this, but they can carry over as well into other races. Yep. So there's kind of that aspect as well. And some people consider a war chest. My council member, I've been on record saying like, I raise as much as I need to win. So she doesn't ever do it with the intention of having any left over, and having that war chest necessary, because again, it's one, you don't want to be automatically, lead with a level of assumption that you're going to, have this opportunity to run again, right? Should be
Interesting.
The people. So we raised as much as we needed. So as we were getting towards the end, we were still having conversations of like, hey, how much more do we still need to fundraise? Because now it's like, we're 30 days out, but we only have this amount of money. Let's get X amount more to be able to afford to do this, that, and the third. But money in politics does matter. Money in politics can win races. I'm not someone that believes that just because you raise the most, you will win by default. Okay. I'm sure that it's going to come to a period of time where I'm going to be supporting a candidate who did not raise the most, and I still will have high intentions of thinking that we have the chance to win, and the strategy to win. As long as it's not like, you probably can't get doubled by somebody. You raise 50 and they did 100. If they have even a level of symbolism of competence, they'll probably be able to win that race. But like, if it's like we raised 70 and they raised 84, I feel just as confident that we can still find a way to win.
I've always said that I would like us just to remove the fundraising at some point, and let's just run off policy.
Well,
I wish we could. I know it can't happen. It can't happen. But I would love.
And theoretically, I'm fine with that. But also, I think when you're able to fundraise, there's a lot of people who feel like corporate money shouldn't be in it, and to an extent, I agree with that. But if you do not have the capacity to sit across from somebody and get them to say, I'm gonna write you a $10,000 check right now, I think that shows that, are you gonna have the capacity to get a deal done when you're in that office?
Agreed.
Are you gonna have the capacity to sit in a room with somebody who might be a private equity or a business owner or a landowner or whatever the case may be, and get the best deal for the city or the district or the state or whatever? If you can't fundraise that, because at that point they're having to bet on you and the vision that you have, right? Yep. And so if you're not able to get these people to give you money, I don't necessarily know if you might have the creative capacity to do it once you're in office. Me personally.
I agree to that point, because I know that that's a point. That's the reason that a lot of people are in their positions now. Yeah. My counter to that is certainly for the Black and brown communities, and some of it is because we're not in the room. We don't even know the people to connect to get that $10,000 check. Oh my gosh. And if we do get elected, we would be able to have these conversations and do exactly what you need us to do. But because we don't have the network already, we're already behind and we can't raise the money.
I just feel as if like a lot of the rooms that you're going to have to get in to get the resources to tend to the communities that you're speaking of are going to be rooms that maybe don't look like the people who you're trying to help.
That is true.
That's the case. That's just a fact. Yeah. And I can also say this, that it's a craft to be able to speak to people with money and get them to do something with it. Yeah. That's a craft. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's not something that you can just speak down on because someone else can actually do it and you can't. Because I find that it's becoming a cop-out for people to say, hey, don't support this person. This person is getting money from these people. But in reality, if we were to put you in that room, you probably don't have the comfortability to really sit across the table from them and get them to sway in any direction.
That's true.
So my thing is like, it's easier to say it because then it allows for, and again, undoubtedly, there needs to be more reform put into outside money being put into politics. But for the people who are utilizing it to say like for me, I only by the grace of God, I speak to people who are millionaires daily, undoubtedly weekly, multimillionaires. And one, I love that the people who are these people who are very humanistic. So I don't even, it's even me saying it aloud, I don't think of them as millionaires. I think of them of the person that they are.
Yep.
But I know how to speak to them in a way in which I have been able to get tens of thousands of dollars to go from point A to point B for whatever I'm trying to get it to go from point A to point B for. And that in some cases took time. I'm thinking of one example when I was in the music business that took months. From the first time I brought it up to this person to the moment that person cut the check, it took like, I don't know, 2 months, right? And that took a level of intentionality. It was like, I don't know, less than 100.
He always wants to know how
less than 100,000.
Yeah, more than 50. Maybe less than 100, somewhere in there. I'll give you that 50 to 100.
Phillip Noel.
I mean, you didn't already know that.
If you are going to be my elected leader, you need to be able to go into rooms and do things that maybe I don't have the capacity to do. Mm-hmm. And if I can't send you into the room and broker the best deal for me, but then you have politicians who are being led and controlled by these entities, so I'll put that disclaimer out. But I'm speaking for the ones who are just doing it the way that they should. If you can't go into the room and get somebody to cut you 100, 500, 750, a million plus, the people that you're leading are going to suffer. So I probably will more so forever enjoy working on the side of the incumbent who has the credibility and the track record of not only winning, but getting things done while in office and building these partnerships with either individuals or corporations or whatever the case may be, because it shows that you have certain abilities to just get a deal done. That's why when Trump ran in 2016, a lot of people kept mentioning his book, The Art of the Deal. I want a president who's a businessman, right? That was their thing in that 2016 race, because he was like, I can get your best deal for this. And he then copied and pasted it to like, I can get the best deal for this in the war that's over there. And that's how in this war, he was trying to take this very business-like mindset about how to get things done. I come from that. I come from a level of pragmatic ideals and strategies about, I know what this person wants. I know what we need. How can I find a mutual agreement that works decently good for everyone at the table? And also come to the terms where, similar to what Randy mentioned when he was on the show, I do come from a level of conservatism. I would probably consider myself also an independent in that way, being in the middle, but I also consider to be more moderate. Just at the end of the day, I'm in the middle because I have the ability to communicate to people on both sides and not be like emotionally swayed in either direction. And there's certain topics that I find that are a little bit too left, but then I find that there are things that are in no way giving people a seat at the table where I feel as if that they should be heard. So I'm normally the one in the middle. I want my politicians to be able to get money. Like if you can't get people to cut a check, you got to understand as well, definitely at the local level, these people become your advocates in rooms, right? And it's not like you're going off of a template where they get to just ride a car off of an automated track. It's like, no, your person is going to be the one that's striking deals for you on a random Tuesday afternoon while you're on your lunch break. There is somebody who is vying to determine what that land space at that corner is going to show. Is it going to be an empty space for the next 2 years, or if it's going to be a whatever? And that's from somebody's craft and ability to know how to get a deal done.
That's so true.
And if you can't, that's a big thing for me. Yeah. To be able to support you or not.
I respect that.
I would say too, to counter, I guess,
Please.
if I'm giving somebody, let's just say I get to the point where I'm able to give somebody a $70,000 check.
Sure.
And I'm advocating for you in these rooms. I'm going to expect something in return. So are these deals that are being made just out of pure philanthropy? Or is it saying like, hey, I did this for you. I'm going to need you to connect me with the Virginia Department of Education to get my friend in here as a teacher, and I want her to get paid X amount of dollars.
And like she said, that's happening.
Okay.
I can say I have not been in any of that, in those situations where I support a candidate who maneuvers that way.
Who did that? Okay.
But that happens.
Yeah.
And you have to think, it's like, and these checks would be much more than 70 too. There's a lot of people that's dropping.
Oh yeah. Oh, I was about to say 3 million because I'm dropping 3 mil.
People that are.
I'm gonna need my kids to be straight and they kids.
But the corporations, we're talking. We talk about the corporations. They're the ones that are dropping the big checks. Let's be honest. And yes, they want something. They want the policy influenced by you. And again,
this is why I can only speak about certain topics so often, because of the fact that, like, is that not human? That is human. If you were to give somebody, look, let's just bring it to you. If you gave somebody, and your answer might be different. If you had given somebody I very much appreciate that you had me on this evening because I know that you are forking out something for this time and space. So I appreciate you even finding me to be worthy enough for you to pay somebody for this, right? Like, let's say you had somebody that you gave just complete free time in here that you were going to pay for, and you gave them a year's worth of that. And they finally get invited to, it's going to be a random example, I'm sorry. The Essence Fest because of the work that they did here. Because their show just took off. And now they're going to be a host on the Essence Fest. And you know that they Essence Fest is like, hey, I'm going to give y'all 10 extra tickets to bring you and your staff out here. We're going to give you an all access like experience for the Essence Fest.
Right.
And you didn't get anything. You can be honest.
Yeah.
Would you feel kind of some type of way that you didn't get? Again, their show took off because of the space that you allotted them here. There is no show without you.
I probably would, yeah.
Okay.
I think I would feel some type of way.
And so when we then are talking thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, these people, when they become millionaires, they don't change into these different people. They're still the people at the end of the day. And I know it's a random workaround example.
That's a good example,
yeah. One more thing. Is this last part is going to be on there too? Because I'm always interested who stays at the end of this, right? Yeah. The first person that stays literally to this part in the show, if they can comment an octopus emoji on anything, on any posts, and that's such a if they comment an octopus post, my marketing firm will give a $50 Visa card to anybody who first. Let
me get my fence to.
I love it, but I love this strategy, and I'm going to use it. But before you close it off, hold on.
Okay.
Can you please tell us where the people can find
where we can find you,
social
where we can
media,
support
your
you.
Instagram, your websites, everything? Give us all that
I've
information.
learned that it's best recently to give them as little options as possible and give them one thing. And I've learned that is an amazing strategy and tactic that I've been trying to adopt
marketing expert himself. Let's go.
Too many options gives people too many things to choose from, and they might choose nothing at that point.
Okay.
So just follow me on Instagram at Mr. MR _Noel NOEL. Yeah.
Okay.
And then from
like
there, the rest of it is on.
Oh my God, the gems that I took away today.
Truly.
Man, this has been amazing.
Let me know
shout it
if
out
somebody,
today.
please let me know if somebody puts and I don't care what the post is, as long as it's on their page.
Hey.
Yes, put a octopus emoji. You don't have to say anything else, but yeah, we'll take care of it.
I like it.
We're going to know.
Yes, we'll know who saw it all the way through. I love that.
All right, y'all. I love y'all. Peace, blessings, and good night.
Good night.